Hey guys, it's Marissa from Imagine This, and today we are going to be going over this week's lesson for our pre-art class. Our pre-art class is our youngest class, and the ages range from 2 to 5, but anyone is welcome to join in on the fun. So before we get started, let's go over materials. The first thing that you're going to need is either a palette or a paper plate with some paint on it. We have chosen to use the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. You are also going to need pieces of paper. Depending on how many paintings you want to create, you can have one, you can have two pieces. Something that we provided for you were these little sticker foam shapes. So I've got this here from the packet that we gave you guys. There are triangles, circles, squares, lots of different shapes. And then something that we did not provide, there are many different options for you to use, but you need some kind of a roller. So a couple different options that we pulled out. We have a piece of paper here that we just rolled up and taped together. You could also use a jar. We have these little rolling pins here. Just know that if you are going to be using a rolling pin from the kitchen, even if you are using washable paint, it still will probably stain the wood. So just be prepared for that. Either wash it off really, really quickly and really well, or just use an old one that you are going to throw away or use for crafts from now on. You could also even use a toilet paper roll, whatever you can find around the house. We just need something that has that, that long shape that we can roll on the piece of paper. You also have the option of using a paintbrush, or you can just go ahead and use your fingers and dip it in and have some sensory fun. So this is going to be an option as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So we are going to go ahead and we're going to use our rolling pin that we have today, but again, there are lots of different options for you to use. And parents, this is a great opportunity for you to go over shapes with your child, to review colors, to review different shapes. It might be even fun to play around with making new shapes with all of these little ones that you have, but you're going to have your child pick out a few, and there is a sticky side on the other side. So go ahead and help them peel that off. And then we're going to wrap that on really nice and tight onto our rolling pin or jar or piece of paper. So you're just going to do it so that you're covering this, not entirely. We want to have some space in between our shapes so that we have a nice rolling pin full of lots of different shapes that you can use and create. Okay, now that I have this covered with a bunch of different shapes to use and explore, the next step is to do some paint. So as I mentioned earlier, the paintbrush is optional. If you want to, you can just go ahead and start dipping and rolling in your rolling pin in the paints, or you can get a paintbrush, work on some hand-eye coordination, and paint on top of these shapes. You can do different colors for each shape. You can do it all the same color. Whatever you want to experiment with. I'm going to try and spread it pretty evenly on here so we don't have some gunky spots. So now that I have that painted on pretty well, I'm going to grab my piece of paper and I am going to start rolling and see all these shapes show up. So at first there might be a lot of paint that's coming onto the paper. So at first it might be a little bit heavier on the paint, but as you go along and the paint lifts up a little bit, you'll be able to see the shapes a lot easier. So this is when you have the option to have several pieces of paper and do lots of different shapes. Again, this is a great opportunity, parents, to talk to your children about patterns and repetitive shapes and so forth. So now you have the option, the paint is all off of the shapes. You can go in, maybe add in a new color. If you pulled out a few different options for the rolling pin, you can even start over and grab something new and do some new shapes layer on top of each other. So once you've played around with a bunch of different shapes and some colors, we can put this activity aside because we have a second project for you guys to work on together. So I'm going to go ahead and you can keep your paint out. You can choose to have paint in this next project, but our next project, we are going to be painting some pinwheels. So I'm going to just put all my supplies aside from the first project. And then in the packet that we gave you some supplies to make a pinwheel. You should have a long plastic stick like this. You should have a piece of paper with the sides already cut out. And then you should also have two little pins. They should match the color of the stick that you have here. So if you have purple, be looking for these purple pins. There's one that's pretty long that looks like this. And then there's another really small one that you might have to dig through to find that looks like this. So these are the materials that you're going to need. You have the option at this point if you want to paint your pinwheel or if you want to color it with markers. The only thing is that if you paint it, you're going to have to wait for it to dry until putting it together. So it's up to you. We have our markers out here. We already have our paint from our last project and our paintbrush. So we're going to go ahead and take a minute and color some fun designs on here. Okay, so now that I've taken my time to color both sides, I decided to use marker. And if you did use marker, you do need to give it a couple of minutes to dry just so it doesn't smear everywhere. Mine's been sitting here for a minute, so it should be fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this little white piece that looks like a flower, and I'm going to color that as well. So I have this side colored because there's only going to be one side that's showing. So now that I have my little pieces, Mom and Dad, you might need help with this part. There is a open hole on this big long one, and I'm going to go ahead and stick that right on top of our stick, our pole here. Okay, so get that nice and securely on like this. The next thing that we're going to do is we have these little 4 punches on the sides and then 1 punch in the middle. So we're just going to make sure that those punches are out so we have the holes. And then very carefully, we are going to bring this hole in line with this middle hole. And so it's going to start creating to actually look like a pinwheel. Got all 4 of them in this center. Okay, so hold on to it really tightly. It's going to look something like this. The next thing that I'm going to do is we are going to secure it. So we need this little guy here in the front so that all the holes line up. You might have to play around a minute just to make sure that all of the holes line up exactly, because we are going to be sticking this right onto our long hole here at the end right here. So if you actually just want to do this one by one while you have it already on, that might be a little bit easier. Okay, so next I'm going to put this little flower on. And then our last step is this last little tube that we're going to put on here to secure everything else on it. And there you have it, a pinwheel that you colored all by yourself. Now you can go outside when it's windy and spin it around and have fun with it. Okay, please send us some pictures. We'd love to see what you guys do. Bye!